Yeah, the whole Bernie thing, I just can't. And the DNC links, we're going to leak that he's an atheist, and that to me is an incredible distinction because there is no way in hell anyone in Europe, I'm not just talking Britain, anyone in Europe would be like, right, we're gonna get Bernie, we're gonna get our political opponents by revealing that they're an atheist.
Right.
I mean, that would reflect badly on the person who said it.
Yeah.
It would be if someone said, "Oh, by the way, that guy over there, he's not an atheist. He's an atheist." People would be like, "What are you saying that for? That's weird. Just go away. We really don't care." I mean, this is the thing. This is the difference, and it always just it grates on me. In fact, whenever I see American politics, when you guys talk about God, you talk about God quite a lot,
Yeah.
and it's just like God. And a British politician would never bring up God. Just it would be the end of the conversation, and everyone would be like, oh, God, why is he bringing this up? You know, it's weird.
Yeah, I guess it makes less sense too for the Democratic Party, since that is, that is distinctly the atheist wing right now. I think that's changing. We've talked about that. Listen, I mean, I make, and if you wanna, hit me on my Christian, people do all the time. I'm a Christian. I'm pretty open about it. And I'm always willing to discuss it, and we've had good discussions. But I have talked with Not Gay Jared about this. We have less in common with a lot of young Christians because it's sort of switched. Where atheists were all liberal because of the abortion issue, and now a lot of young Christians have the Bernie bumper sticker because they think, well, Jesus talked about sharing. And so I share more common ground intellectually with a lot of younger atheists because they're becoming more libertarian and Christians are becoming more left, whereas it used to be the opposite. I don't know if that makes sense, if that is at all true with Europe.
It makes sense, and I know what you're talking about. And this is something that I always found very weird about the United States. You seem to be the least Christian country ever. I mean, like, if one was to look at the life of Jesus, you would think that all of your Christians would be Bernie Sanders supporters.
No. Not killing the baby up until conception, and no freedom and lack of empathy.
That's my point, isn't it? That's two issues. That's not like
everything about it though. It's being a total. That's one thing too. This idea that here we get into the theology. Jesus was a liberal. There's nothing about him that was. I mean,
I wouldn't. He wasn't a liberal. He was a
okay. No, he wasn't. Wasn't even close.
Oh, he was.
No. Give me the justification on that one.
Okay, how exactly does a rich man get into heaven?
Well, you're talking about a parable. We're talking about through the eye of a needle, right? So it's like taking Revelations very literally. Whereas when you look at the literal,
I'm saying take it literally.
Okay, but the very literal examples of money.
It's the religion, isn't it? It's concerned for the poor and the downtrodden, and the advice to the rich is to give your wealth away, and go and do good.
Key advice there, right? What did you just say? The what for the rich? The advice for the rich. There was never an advocation of a system of government on forcing the rich.
Sorry, say again.
I said you just said advice for the rich, and I think that's true, and that's why wealthy Christians give far more than any other group on earth. But it's not a system of government for the rich.
No, I know. I'm not.
Right. So I don't think of Jesus as a
religion.
Yes.
But you would think that you would think that Christians would be a lot more. If I live like Jesus, then I'm being a better Christian.
Well, I think more Christians do. If you look at charitable giving and you look at serving their community, I think Christians, the reason why a lot of them are conservatives, is they don't believe that government will do that more effectively. So they take it upon themselves. So I don't see it as a Christian worldview there's nothing charitable about spending somebody else's money, about stealing money and spending it. So that's communism.
Now, is this the argument Jesus would make?
Well, Jesus was asked directly about it, and he never made an argument in the favor of a system of government. He deliberately avoided it.
I know. He was not involved in government, but...
Well, he was an anti-government, basically. I mean, he was put to death not just because of religion. He was put to death for, going against the political establishment of the day. And
No, he didn't go against the political establishment.
The Pharisees and Sadducees totally the system. If you talk about, like, today in the banks, they were completely intertwined with government back then.
They were, but the Romans didn't have any interest in Jewish squabbles. I mean, they didn't care that there was a Jewish heretic that the Pharisees wanted to put to death. And Pontius Pilate even just shrugged and washed his hands and said, look, this isn't anything to do with me, didn't he? So
he was a germaphobe too. That's a part. They didn't have hand sanitizer around. No, I think this is an important point though, because it's often tossed at Christians, and that's what's created a lot of young Christian liberals. It's just not accurate.
And it's not an attack or anything like
No,
that.
no.
It's, one of those things that, I mean, and this is the thing that I always try to contrast with Islam. Christianity is definitely sort of a bottom-up religion. It's obviously it's concerned about the poorest and most vulnerable and what good can be done for them, whereas Islam is very much top-down, prescriptive, authoritarian. And so when people are just like, well, all religions are the same, aren't they? It's like, no, they're completely different. And only someone who doesn't know anything about these religions would suggest that maybe they're all the same just because they're religions. It's like saying all governments are the same because they're all governments. It's silly. It's just totally ill-informed, and it really annoys me hearing it.
Yes.
And we hear it all the time.
Yeah, well, I think you just sort of, in a roundabout way, made the case for why Christianity would be more libertarian and Islam would be more communist. Allow me to explain. Because as you're talking about, Christianity is from the bottom up, right? So a good example with Islam, why it's spread by force. Socialism, communism, at the end of the day, can only be applied through force, through government force, through violence. At the end of the day, if you don't do this, the government is going to send in men with guns. Whereas the idea of self-governance, of libertarianism, can only be done through free will, which is why if you look in Europe, you see a lot of, like you said, secularists, they give far, far less. They're far less charitable, where they have bigger governments. In the United States, much smaller government, but people are exponentially more charitable. And I would say that that's a big part, particularly when you take the stats of the Christian right. Those are the most charitable people on earth, whether we like it or not.
Okay, I think I mean libertarian is probably not really how I'd phrase it. I mean, if anything, I mean Jesus sounds like he was running a hippie commune, So
now when he tells people to go buy a sword.
Yeah, well, let's not even go into it because then we get into what's valid and what's not in the Bible.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, generally, at least by Saul of Tarsus's estimation, he seems to have been a bit of a hippie commune leader, whereas Islam is a lot more like fascism, where every Muslim is a Nazi. Not that I'm saying Muslims are Nazis.
Hashtag all Muslims, Sargon said it. Get that trending, son.
But it creates the dichotomy. It creates the us-them, whereas Christianity doesn't really have that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, like Islam is much more prescriptive, and it's pretty clear their system of government and law. And this is the difference. This is what makes it tough. And I understand why atheists have issues with Christianity, and I think there's a misunderstanding of the separation of church and state doesn't exist. It's not in the Constitution. But I understand why atheists can get leery of people using their faith. I get mad. Not gay. Jared and I talk about it when politicians use it to pander on the other side. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, you're clearly lying about it. The difference with Islam and Christianity, and I think you're fair to make this comparison. I think we're tracking here. Is Islam is government hat, religious hat, theology hat, community hat, all as one. With Christianity, you can go, okay, this is my faith, these are my morals, and then at some point, national security, you take off the religion hat, the faith hat, and put on the American hat.
I mean, it is directly in line with what Jesus said. Render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, render unto God what is God's.
Right.
That you could not get a more blatant distinction and a more blatant endorsement of secularism from Jesus Christ.
Right.
You couldn't get a more distinct, like, specific endorsement of secularism and how Christianity shouldn't be running the state from his own mouth. Whereas Islam is completely the opposite. It was
I think we use the term secularism. Like a good example is the United States was the first country to really do that, right? Like no Church of England. But faith was way more...
We're still not a secular state. I mean, the Queen is the head of the church and she's the head of the state.
So you're technically not a So technically the United States is a much more secular nation, but obviously, people are
on paper you would think so. But I tell you what, if any politician brought up God, it would be silence in the room
until someone insults another man in Parliament. I've always thought that was funny.
Well, yeah.
And then they argue about civility in the United States. I'm like, have you ever seen Parliament?
Yeah, but there's something honest about it, isn't there?
There is.
And they're just going hammer and tongs at each other. It's like, yo, get the daggers out.
Yeah. No, this is it's an interesting dialogue. Well, that's what I would say. When people say, kind of like you have a qualm with when people use the word liberal, right? I sit with communists like, well, hold on a second. Even if Jesus were like a hippie commune on his own, he never advocated that for a system of government.
No, he didn't.